So we've all seen how passionate Remainers are about the EU and the European project, and how they always defend the beloved European Parliament and say how democratic it is and how useful it is for the continent. So following the recent European elections that we had back in June, and we sent a number of new British MEPs, one passionate Remain MEP from the Green Party has changed his mind about the whole project and the way the European Parliament works. Magid Magid, who was also the Lord Mayor of Sheffield, has recently been elected as a Green MEP in the European Parliament. And somehow his views have radically changed about the way the system works in Brussels. So let's have a look at his article that he's written in the Politico and see what his views are now that he's been in Brussels for a few weeks. In my first 2 weeks as a member of the European Parliament, I've stumbled into a baffling realization. Next to nobody in Brussels has any clue what the European Union truly stands for beyond a flag and an anthem, and more crucially, where it's heading. Okay, I can already tell this is going to be fun, so I think we're going to need some popcorn before we continue. And that includes the EU leaders and senior officials soullessly waddling through the corridors of power. I mean, what else was he expecting? When I arrived in the EU capital, I expected to find it brimming with activity and potential answers to these questions. Oh, poor boy. Instead, I felt duped. Making a tangible impact on constituents' lives is apparently not what being an MEP is all about. Oh, and Belgian hot chocolate is a distant disappointment. Really? The one good thing about Belgium. Seriously, Magid? When I look at my daily to-do list, I feel as though I have left the shores of the real life and stepped into a maze of bureaucracy, needless technicalities, and political performance. I mean, we've been saying this for years and years, you just didn't listen. MEPs live in a bubble, one where we celebrate politicians who bailed out bankers, blamed migrants, and imposed crippling levels of austerity. It's also one where the slightest bit of difference stands out like a sore thumb. Only 30 of the new class of the 751 MEPs are people of, okay, he's going towards now political correctness, as usual, which is basically what the Green Party is all about. Well, the main issue is that obviously he didn't realize that the EU is not your Disneyland of democracy and good ideas, and MEPs have absolutely no power. These people got into the European Parliament thinking that they can go in there and introduce legislation, have real debates and proper votes, and then they realize that actually they can't introduce legislation because that's the job of the unelected commission. On my first day at work in Parliament in Strasbourg, I was asked to leave by someone who clearly thought I didn't belong. Yes, we've heard this story from Magid before about his first day and how they thought he didn't actually belong in the building. And obviously he blamed it on the fact that apparently he looks different to other Europeans in the European Parliament. But in reality, considering the way Magid dresses on a daily basis and his special casual dress code, I wouldn't be surprised if the staff members just thought he's some sort of tourist. More MEPs need to realise that the real fight isn't in the Parliament hemicycle or in our compact offices. It's in the communities we represent and in the heart and mind of the people who live there. Oh, so sweet and naive. If he seriously thought that the European project actually cared about any particular region, community or area in any of the European countries, well, you're mistaken. The centralized system that the Brussels bureaucrats have created it is designed to make it more centralized and less localized. So don't expect any staff member or bureaucrat in the European Union to even know or have heard of the area that you come from, because that's not their job. Their job is to design policies that they think would apply to every single European in the continent and force them, whether they like it or not. But instead of reaching out, people here are burying their heads in the sand. And faced with the everyday bureaucracy and contradictions of our jobs, it's all too easy to do that. Well, it is what it is. I'm sorry, Magid. In Brussels in particular, we need more transparency in the way we make decisions. Our institutions are plagued with convoluted costumes, hidden handshakes, and backdoor bargaining. Again, I have no idea how he didn't know this before he got there. Seriously. I've seen it firsthand already. How can we reject the accusations leveled against the European elite that we are out of touch when the top dogs in our Parliament and Commission are chosen through obscure quid pro quo arrangements agreed over champagne and truffles in Brussels' finest hotel lobbies? Well, this has been one of the biggest misperceptions a lot of Remainers, especially young Remain voters, have had about the European Union. They think that because every 4 years they get a vote when it comes to MEPs and the European Parliament, then obviously it's a democratic body. Whereas in reality, obviously, as I said earlier, the Commission makes the laws overall, and the Commission is not elected, they're appointed. Even the President of the European Council is also basically appointed by a small group of people. In brief chats with the everyday Bruxellois, from cab drivers to my barber, it's clear to me that few know anything about the EU, let alone why they should care. If those working on Parliament's doorstep are oblivious about what happens inside, you can be damn sure citizens living in the far reaches of our continent have no idea. Well, I'm personally looking forward to welcoming Magid onto the dark side of Brexit. And I'll even put my email address in the description of this video. Feel free to get in touch with me and I will introduce you to the real world. The cohort of MEPs with whom I'm serving will be in Brussels for the next 5 years. If they elect to preserve the status quo, there's no guarantee the EU will last much longer than that. Firstly, I'm hoping he's not talking about the British MEPs when he says they're going to be serving for the next 5 years, because yeah, that's not going to happen. Secondly, I absolutely agree with Magid that the whole structure and the machine of the European Union will not last too long with the way that they're managing the whole thing. We need to build a Europe that is democratic, compassionate and gifted with an enlivened democratic mandate. We need a radically progressive program, one that puts our most vulnerable first while protecting future generations from the climate crisis. Okay, you're losing me again, Magid. You're complaining that these people in Brussels are all a centralized bureaucratic machine deciding for everyone, and then you say you want to do the exact same thing but with a different group of people? The only way Europe could survive and thrive is for every nation state to be fully independent and sovereign and democratic, and as well as we could have a trade zone in Europe across the continent, and every nation state and country should be able to decide their own trade policy and then their own domestic policies. And that's the only way we could keep going and we could keep this peace that we have in Europe. But the one thing we've learned from this segment and Magid's perspective on the European Union and the European Parliament is that these people have no idea what the EU is and what they actually do in Strasbourg. So I'm going to show you a short clip of what actually happens in the European Parliament.
Okay, yeah, okay, bye-bye.
It is the unelected Commission that have the sole right to propose legislation.
Mr. President, Prime Minister, members of the European Parliament, I would like to welcome those that have actually taken the trouble to turn out this morning, but the fact that there's about 30 members of Parliament present in this debate only really illustrates the fact that Parliament is not serious in this. And I'm putting that to you today. If Mr. Muscat and Mrs. Merkel, difficult to imagine that, or Mr. Macron perhaps, if had been here, it would have been full.
La prego, signor Presidente, di avere un atteggiamento più rispettoso nei confronti.
Could you please have a more respectful attitude? You may criticize the Parliament, yes, but the Commission does not control the Parliament. It's the Parliament that should be controlling the Commission. Thank you.
There are only few members in the plenary to control the Commission. You are ridiculous. I wanted to pay tribute.
Well, thank you for watching as usual. If you want to support this channel, make sure you join the Cabinet Club. The link is in the description. As always, make sure you share this video and subscribe, and don't forget to click on the notification bell next to it, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new video.